episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. A couple of days ago, we did a live stream doing some reactions to free agency stuff. But today we're going to go through it a little bit more structured, go through some of the top spenders during this free agency cycle, and of course talk about some of the big players that have been signed, which will probably coincide with the big spenders. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening?
I'm doing well. I'm in Foxborough, Massachusetts right now, actually.
Yeah, I can see the Patriots jersey on you.
Yeah, I had to cop the Jack Jones jersey because we went to Gillette Stadium and it was $25 at the pro shop. And Jack Jones is such a legendary player for me that I thought the 25 for an authentic pro shop jersey was worth it. But I'm in Foxborough because my girlfriend has family up here, so we have a free place to stay, and it's her spring break. So figured might as well come see the East Coast, come see Boston and Foxborough and maybe some other cities, Providence maybe. But I took a red eye.
Let it be known that
flight
Theo
to get
Ash
here.
let it be known that Theo Ash had went to Boston before he came to Ohio to see Matt and I. That's crazy.
Yes, I did. Because Boston...
That's crazy,
Boston's
man.
a destination city, and Cincinnati is not.
The old GF. I don't know if I could sell her on a Cleveland vacation to see Blaiden and Matt as easily as I could sell.
You're telling me that Browns Bengals in Cleveland wouldn't move the needle for you?
Well, first of all, for her spring break, that isn't happening. Second of all, it would probably deter her further, honestly.
That's insane.
But yeah, so that's what I've got going on. But I took a red eye in, so it left at 11 p.m. Denver time and got in at 5:30 a.m. Boston time. But I took a nap and I've had coffee, so I'm feeling pretty good. And this is a very rare recording where the three of us are in the same time zone, so that's nice.
That is rare. Well, I'm glad you got your nappy poo in, Theo. Glad you got your coffee break. But Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty standard week for me. Mostly just been paying attention to the free agency stuff.
Scrolling Twitter.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what are we thinking for this episode, Blaiden? You have a list of the top team spenders in free agency, and we're just going to go as far down the list as we can. And if your team didn't spend anything in free agency, we probably won't talk about you.
Yeah, PFF has a list of the biggest spenders, and then Spot Rack has a list of the guys who have gotten the most money. So we can go through all of that, or most of that, or as much of it as we can in our.
Yeah, I think we should just go down the team list and just see how many we can get to.
Yeah, I've been looking at both, and they cross over pretty heavily. The number one team on the PFF board for the biggest spenders is not who you want to see there. Do either of you have any guesses for who it is?
Who spent the most money?
It's got to be
the Falcons, just because of Kirk. But
no,
I don't know.
They're up there, but
well, could it be those good old boys in blue in Carolina?
No, it's the New York Giants.
Ooh.
Oh, because of Burns.
Because of Brian Burns, yeah.
Yeah, let's start by talking about them and the Burns deal especially. I thought it was kind of a whatever move to trade for Burns, just because I think the Giants are screwed, but you have to do something, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like, I look at the state of their offense and the pick that they have. The offensive line is atrocious. They lost Saquon. They don't have a true number one or really a true number two, and maybe not even a true number three in their receiving core. So
not looking good.
And they're kind of out of May and Caleb range unless they trade up. Maybe they could get Jaden, but I don't know if Jaden is good enough to elevate that supporting cast. So when I look at New York, I just think I don't know how they turn it around, but I don't really think that can be your mentality. So they go make the move for Burns. And I'm like, okay, it's fine, I guess. Like he'll probably get 10 sacks, and I don't know. From the Giants' perspective, it just is like, I guess you have to try something. You have to make a move. You have all this cap space, I guess, and the team needs to get way better. And Burns maybe is the best player that changed hands in this cycle. So, but I guess I don't think it's enough. That's my first reaction to the Giants free agency is like they were boned before free agency and they're kind of still boned after it.
Yeah. I thought the Burns deal was okay for them. Burns is like a tier 2 edge rusher, I would say. He's not TJ Watt. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not Mike or whoever else, Nick Bosa. But he's still a pretty rare player at a very valuable position.
Mm-hmm.
$30 million puts him right at the top of where edge rushers are paid. I think it makes him the second highest paid. And a lot of that's guaranteed. It's like Daniel Jones money, ironically, that he got. And he's certainly a better player than Daniel Jones. So it's a win in that regard. The salary is going way up, and, the market's going to be reset all the time. I understand the Panthers not wanting to pay it. But I don't think the Giants are crazy for wanting to invest and make that move. But it certainly doesn't feel like they're building towards, an identity with it, I guess, would be my point. Him and Dexter Lawrence are probably going to get a lot of work done. But I still don't feel great about that defense with Saquon gone. I mean, their offensive weapons and their offense in general just looks like a disaster,
Yeah. This was something we talked about
It's tough. It is tough to figure out how to build forward from here. They didn't create themselves a path, and maybe there was no way to do it. But I guess I can. In a vacuum, the Burns deal is fine, so I'm not too upset about it.
They also have an out
that we definitely
after the first
talked about
years.
on. Oh, do they?
Yeah, it seems like their cap hit for Burns in 2024.
What is the difference between an out and cutting somebody? I've never known my whole life. What is the difference?
I think cutting someone is the out, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense to cut somebody.
Your out is just like when your cap saved is more than your dead cap. That's all that is.
Okay, can I get a takeoff?
Sure.
First thing you start to tell me about a contract is, we'll be fine in 2 years. I don't want to hear any of that. The goal is that you signed the good player now. If they're cutting Brian Burns in 3 years, it's a disaster. Maybe not a disaster, but it's probably not good, bro. So I think it's crazy to say. That's how we look at every contract. I think it's crazy to look at that and be like, well, they could cut him in 3 years. Yeah, but the goal is not to.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, dude, they can cut Daniel Jones after 2 years. It was a terrible contract. Horrifyingly bad. It's not all guaranteed money, but I don't know. And even then, if it's an out and they can only have like $15 million against them in year 4 if they cut him, it's like, that's really not that good, man. I don't think that's going to happen regardless. This is not Brian Burns related.
Yeah. I don't even know.
He's a very good player.
I'm just looking at the contract and just
no.
Literally just saying what I am seeing. Potential out 2027, but whatever. I just think it's a drop in the well and the chasm is just the Giants' offensive talent. So if you're a Giants fan listening to this and looking for a reason to go on, I don't think that the Brian Burns deal is going to provide that to you, but the defense should keep them out of like worst team ever territory, I guess. Like you mentioned, I think Lawrence is always going to demand a double team. If you put him and Burns on the same side, like Burns should face plenty of like one-on-one opportunities with the guard busy on. So I think a double-digit sack season, like he's got the wicked moves, like he can, fake inside and then hit like that outside spin around the outside shoulder and hit all kinds of wicked shit. So it's, what am I saying? Wicked shit. I'm in a Boston jersey. That was weird, but
hey, I'm walking here.
You can hit all kinds of wicked moves, yo. That's bad.
I don't know. I think we were talking about this on the live yesterday with the Raiders and them bringing in Wilkins, and they're on this list too, so we'll talk about that more. But basically, you have to do something, right? You can't just be like, what is the alternative to not signing Brian Burns? Just like you lose Saquon and you just keep getting bad. Like I don't know. I can't be mad. I can't be mad at them for
maybe an offensive infrastructure and sort of maybe flesh out the offensive line here. But honestly, with some of the contracts to these offensive linemen, I guess I can kind of understand.
But the thing is, they're the number one spenders. So Burns isn't the only thing they did, and what they did on offense, they did sign a guard, John Runyon Jr., who was the worst player on the. He was the worst player on the Green Bay line last year, and they gave him a bag. And it's like, if he was not a positive for Green Bay, who develops offensive linemen left and right on a cheap deal, how do you expect an expensive deal in New York, who has a horrible track record with offensive linemen, to age well? So I didn't like that move for them.
They brought in Devin Singletary for $16 million.
I know that, yes, letting Saquon go, I think they're going to regret it. I do think they're going to regret it. And they were kind of in a bad situation because keeping Saquon wouldn't have moved the needle because their line was so bad. And we've seen Saquon be a very good running back, in my opinion, for the last 2 years, and it doesn't translate to success on the field. So you kind of have no good option there. And it stinks that he ended up in your division behind maybe the best run blocking offensive line, and he's probably going to go off on you now. But letting Saquon go is not going to be cool. And I think that it's going to be a very rude awakening for any Giants fans who look at maybe Saquon's efficiency numbers and see that they're not, or really any numbers with Saquon, seeing that they're not that good. Like, it doesn't mean Saquon's not that good. It means that the offense just sucks, and a player as good as Saquon can't even do numbers. So losing him, losing McKinney, to me, counteracts getting Burns, and I think that's a real possibility that they're even a worse team next year than they were.
Losing McKinney is the one I think that shocked me the most, that they would let, like, more so than Saquon. Because I'm not surprised that they let Saquon walk, considering, like, if they were going to extend him, they would have done it a year ago, right? But McKinney, I feel like he's a really good player, Theo. I see you've been tweeting about him. You were texting us in the group chat. Like, he's nice. Like 24 and he's like a star.
It's just $17 million for a team that's rebuilding is so much money for a safety. And I think I looked at PFF's projections for McKinney, and it was like 12.5 per year. So the Packers really, this is the nature of free agency. Everything is kind of an overpay because you get in these bidding wars. Yeah. But, for the Giants, if you're going to pay him $17 million, how is he going to impact winning for them? Like, he's kind of not, because there's so many other holes to address before him. And I think it's good for the Packers that they can kind of poach a good player from a bad team. And if it means overpaying, it means overpaying. But from the Giants' perspective, I think the course of action going forward is just like realize it's over. And this next season will be determining, like, is Dable worth keeping around or not? But I don't know if any of the players on this team outside of Burns will be here in 2 years. Like, really, there's really not a single one at this point. Banks and Dexter, I suppose.
Yeah.
Akirike maybe. But they've
got a few guys on defense that are pretty good. So it's like,
I think it's more over for them than just about any team, though. So I can't say that this has been a W free agency period, but I just think that they were. Yeah,
that's the thing, is to be the
years of mistakes made them screwed now. So
yes. Yeah, I mean, to be the biggest spender and have such a bleak future is not what you want to see. The second biggest spender is the Kansas City Chiefs because of Chris Jones. So the only other deal that they also re-signed Drew Tranquill, and then the only person they brought in externally was Irv Smith Jr.
so we can skip them
What a hell of a class.
because we already talked about Chris Jones.
Yeah, we've already talked about Chris Jones. Obviously,
So we don't
great.
need we don't need to.
Well, who's number
prolong
3?
That. Number 3 is the Atlanta Falcons, and that is where the Kirk Cousins deal comes in, which I'm interested, based on our conversation that we had about Baker Mayfield, I'm interested to hear how you guys feel about this.
If Kirk Cousins comes back 100% from the Achilles, I don't think him and Baker are in the same conversation.
I agree.
So,
I think. Go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
So why would you draw that right to the Baker stuff then?
Because he's 35 coming off an Achilles injury. Like, that's not nothing. To pay him $180
But I
million.
feel like that's an entirely different situation from Baker.
I mean, sure, but you're paying a 35-year-old coming off of like the worst injury in sports $180 million. That's a big risk.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
think
saying. It's like there were potentially safer alternatives for, a rookie head coach. And maybe they just wanted a guy that they felt they could trust at quarterback coming off of, a year where they clearly weren't trusting their quarterback and they weren't getting the ball to their weapons in any capacity. So I get why they brought in Kirk, but it's definitely a risk, I think.
I think that it makes sense for the Falcons and it makes sense for the Vikings to let him walk. That's where I'm at. I think the Vikings obviously had Kirk for 6 years. And as Vikings Twitter's said on Twitter today, thank you, Kirk, for all the yards. But it didn't result in any meaningful playoff success. It didn't really seem like the Vikings could win a Super Bowl with Kirk. So for them, I'm glad that they made the leap into quarterback purgatory. I know it's scary. I know they might find someone who's way worse than Kirk, and it sucks. It's all possible, but they took the leap, they took the plunge, and I think the franchise long term might be better for it. The Falcons have been in the plunge for years now, and I think Kirk is a good stabilizer for them. So I'm not necessarily mad at either team for doing what they did. I think in the natural life cycle of a franchise, you've been bad for so long. If you're the Falcons, bringing in a stable quarterback makes sense. And the quarterback and the Vikings have been just good, but not great for so long that taking the plunge and swinging for the fences, maybe for the quarterback, could be a good move. I think my opinion of this will be shaped by trades with the draft. If the Vikings manage to trade up for May and the Falcons end up with Kirk, I would say the Falcons should have traded up for May. If that ends up being a possibility, like Jaden goes, I don't know how trading up for May could be a possibility, because if Jaden goes 2, why wouldn't the Patriots just take May? But I guess it's a possibility. I don't know. I definitely want to see what the Vikings end up doing and what is possible in the draft, but I'm not mad at it for either team, because I think that Kirk is a better option for JJ McCarthy than JJ McCarthy. I think if the Vikings end up with JJ McCarthy, that would be bad. If they just end up playing Sam Darnold and wait until the right opportunity, that would be good. I don't know. That's just where my head's at with all this.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I just don't think it's like I was saying, I don't think it's quite like the Baker thing, but I'm probably like even less of a fan of it than the Baker stuff.
For the Falcons?
Possibly. Yeah, it might be. I'm sort of still forming my opinion on this. I think it's a huge risk coming off an Achilles injury at 36 years old. Now, it seems like in sports we're getting really, really good at handling Achilles injuries. It used to be, totally game over for guys. And now, like, Kevin Durant's come back and he's played great. And I'm assuming they wouldn't give him this big contract if they didn't feel like he could do the same thing. But it feels like there's still a big dice roll there with what you're going to get out of Kirk. And to me, the high end is absolutely better than like a Baker, for instance, or like a mid-tier quarterback. Like Kirk exists somewhere between like a true franchise guy and just somebody who's average, which is rare for a quarterback to do. But I feel like that's where he truly is. And with those weapons, like that could be pretty good. But the reality is like paying like the 12th or 13th best quarterback big bucks is probably not like a Super Bowl level strategy. And while, yeah, like it does get them out of quarterback purgatory, without it having the potential to be a long-term solution, I wonder if the upside isn't high enough for me to take this risk. Even though I think that the upside is probably a playoff appearance, and maybe it has been so long that you would take that in a weak division. I wonder if you're going to be left searching again here soon. Like, you have all this young talent. I feel very confident that where is the end goal for those weapons? I don't know.
You definitely don't want to end up in a Daniel Jones situation. And I guess that's like Kirk comes back and he's bad off the Achilles. And all of a sudden you're looking at the cap hit and you're saying, 40 million 2025, 57.5 million cap hit 2026. I'd definitely rather be on the Viking side of it and have the freedom to maneuver. I think that if it ends up in like a trade up for JJ McCarthy, I would say like that's not what I would have done with my freedom at the quarterback position. But I think it's okay to kind of keep a holding pattern. And if you're bad for a while, you're bad for a while. I think it's possible to be a bad team in terms of record and still be a good organization while you kind of wait for the right opportunity at that position to prop up.
It's something, a lane's not always open for you, especially at quarterback. There's so few moves. I mean, if we go back over the last 10 years now, knowing what we know, we'd look at some off seasons and be like, there was just nothing to be done. You couldn't do anything. There wasn't somebody available. And a lot of times, like, yeah, there was, but you had to be the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah. Like the Bears when Trubisky didn't work out, it's like they traded up for Fields. They tried to trade for Russ. Neither of those moves were good. Like, what else?
It's like even if we're like omnipotent looking back at it, like here's the years where you needed this or this or this or this, and even this year is probably I don't want to say probably, but very well could be one of those like, well, the number one team needs a quarterback and the number two team needs a quarterback and nobody else works out, and what are you gonna do? And maybe next year is the same way. Who knows? So I guess I don't want to say I dislike it too crazy much for the Falcons, as the guaranteed money is not super far after year 3.
The guaranteed money, so 2024, obviously he's playing. 2025, if he's horrible in 2024, you're probably not cutting him because of the dead cap. 2026, so 3 seasons from now, I mean, it could happen if he's like that bad, like Russ got cut. But yeah, it seems like he's kind of on Spot Track. It suggests that he's kind of locked in for the next 3 seasons, and that 4th, it would be pretty easy to move off of him.
I think 38. It's a decent risk. It is. And the upside, of course, you have a strong offensive line and you have good weapons, and it could turn it, maybe he comes back and the Achilles and is just fine, which I think is totally possible. The offense is great and you figure out how to build out the rest of that defense and you're good to go. Could be. I don't know if this is quite Super Bowl formula level, but how much we weight like that being their possible peak or their ceiling versus like we want to be a good team and we feel like this move is probably going to make us a good team, even if it isn't like such a good bargain that it puts us in that top tier ceiling range. I don't know. But I'm also a Panthers and Desmond Ridder fan, so I'm.
Yeah, Blaiden, what do you think?
Let's supposed to be biased.
Guy. Like, I don't care. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a pretty big risk, and I think when we were talking about the Bucs and Baker, right? If Super Bowl is not the goal, then what is, right? And if you're bringing in Kirk just to make yourself a better team for the sake of it, like Matt said, they have a lot of young, talented guys on offense. They hold a pretty high draft pick. They're probably going to be able to get a good player again. I don't understand what the end goal is for this, because if he's even a best case Kirk Cousins did. I mean, how many playoff wins did they have in Minnesota?
They beat the Saints once.
I think it was just that one.
Yeah.
With Kirk. I think it was
Yeah.
just that one.
Because
I also would. I kind of agree, sort of. But at the same time, there's so few quarterback. Not to go back and defend it, but like there's so few quarterback options. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this only Super Bowl winning move is to draft a guy, and also I think that all of these guys should not be drafted in the first round because they're not good. It's like, well, you have to do something. You do have to try to be good, you know.
Yeah.
And
I think some
is-
part of it too is like just where you are as a franchise. Like the Bucks, and really the Baker move is not that bad. Like looking at the contract details,
No.
it really is only a commitment for the 1 year, and then you can move off of them. Like whatever, it's really not that bad if they don't want to, if they just want to have a competent quarterback this year and see what happens. Plus, like I said, I don't have a lot of faith in Baker, so he could suck next year.
He
I 100% believe it. So if there is a possibility that they end up with a high pick anyway. So I guess I don't care. But with the Bucks, right, they won a Super Bowl. They had Brady, and I just think like in the life cycle of a Super Bowl window or whatever, it's kind of fizzling down, and it's kind of okay to be bad for a little bit now. Whereas, and same thing with the Vikings, right? They've tried this for years. It hasn't. They've been good, but not great. And it's like, okay, let's take a swing. But for the Falcons, right? They've been in real quarterback hell, not winning shit, right? A horrible quarterback play, right? Sorry, Matt, but it's true. And so, like, let's get competent, and the other young players on this roster deserve a quarterback that they can win with, like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Like they deserve a shot to really go out there and put up numbers. So
Respect Tyler Algier.
But
Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't disagree that, like, obviously Kirk makes them better than they would have been otherwise, given the other options available. But like, even like, you know, the big prediction was everyone
Stay
was
with your
expecting
chest,
them
big
to
man.
get what?
obviously Kirk makes them so much better than the other option.
The other option,
No,
everyone said they were going to get
I
Fields.
agree,
That's
I
where
agree.
I was going to Fields. Like everyone was
Oh.
saying they were going to get Fields.
Oh, that's also
Kirk
that's
is better
also
than
true.
Fields, right?
The only options here come from Michigan, Ohio State, and Cincinnati. So, Matt, you just have to sit this one out.
Fair enough.
That's true. Kirk Cousins, Michigan State. Oh man,
I would probably be more excited about the Falcons now if I was a Falcons fan than I was before he made this move. And I honestly wonder, is there a quarterback move that they could have reasonably made, barring like May or Williams is available, that makes you more excited about them this year?
probably
Maybe
Yes. Or
Daniel,
gives you
maybe
more hope.
Daniels.
Maybe Daniels. But if they
But-
go 1, 2, 3, even you're holding. If you're the Falcons, you're completely holding out. You're basing all your hopes on we can trade up in the top 3, and it's completely possible that it's just not available, and you wait till draft night and
Yeah.
you're just done.
Yeah.
And, you're
And
rolling with,
honestly,
like,
I
Brissett
would
or
rather
something.
them. I would rather them take like an edge rusher than get Daniels. I would rather them have Kirk and like an edge rusher than Daniels, and that's it.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
you could have spent that $45 million or whatever a year on other
On
players.
Burns, yeah.
Yeah.
I
We'll
guess.
see.
Well, probably not
No,
on Burns
probably, yeah,
specifically,
probably
but
not Burns. But yeah, somewhat.
yeah,
Yeah. I got you, man. I got you.
somebody.
I think because the Vikings and the Falcons are just so close in draft capital, what the Vikings do in the draft, the Falcons could have probably done.
Okay, well, right now
So-
their option was Sam Darnold and hold. So we'll see what
I
we'll see what
think
that actually ends up being.
I think after the draft, what the possibilities might come to light, and then we can really judge who had more foresight.
fair.
So I don't hate it. I think that if I was a Falcons fan, I would feel excited about having a competent quarterback and being able to potentially see the full capability of these skill position players that they've spent all this draft capital on. So I don't mind it for the Falcons, and I also don't
Yeah.
mind it for the Vikings. I just think it makes sense for where those teams are at. So I would give it. I don't think it was like a mistake to cut Kirk Cousins or release him or whatever you want to not re-sign him. And I don't think it was a mistake to sign him. So it's
They also got Mooney.
Yeah, I was about to say they also gave Mooney $39 million.
That is whatever. I think that's a bit of an overpay. Mooney is a bit inconsistent with his route running and finishing routes strong.
He cooked Jalen Ramsey that one time, so.
But maybe in a better passing offense, it'll be better. But that seemed to me like I wouldn't have been super interested in signing Mooney, but
I probably wouldn't have either. The next team in the sequence is the Carolina Panthers.
There we go.
They spent quite a bit of money at guard, Matt. $100 million to Robert Hunt over 5 years. $53 million to Damian Lewis over 4 years. How we feeling?
I don't hate what they've done. I'm definitely more excited for next year than I would have been otherwise. I think their moves are not all good or all bad. But I think in general, the way that you work yourself out of a hole like the Panthers are in is by making moves that are good in a vacuum. And I wonder if we look at the Panthers' offseason strategy and we defend it by saying, yeah, this move's a little bit of an overpay, but they have to because of Bryce.
Bad team
One of
tax
those is
and-
one thing, but Panthers tax and well, dude, we have the most expensive offensive line in the NFL now. So it has to play really good. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry, man, like if it doesn't turn out to be a top 5 unit, then the value is just not going to be, because everybody's spending the same amount of money. The value is just not going to be there for the Panthers to be a really high level team. And again, I said before, ultimately things are probably going to come down to how well they draft. And I'll even give them a pass on the Burns stuff entirely. That was a mistake that was made a year and a half ago. A bad one, a blunder.
by
They
a
should be
different GM.
embarrassed. But it's by a different GM. Dan Morgan was in the room for that, but by a different GM.
Sure.
But I just say, like, is Robert Hunt $100 million? Makes him one of the highest paid guards in the NFL. Is he one of the best guards in the NFL? No? Well, then that's an overpay.
Yeah.
Damian Lewis is like a replacement level player. Like you said, Theo, like, is that a guy you want to go give, $14 million a year, whatever it came out to be? Maybe not, or Taylor Moton, another good one. Like Moton, solid player. I think he's getting $27 million next year. Is he one of the best tackles in the NFL? Not really. So I appreciate them. I still do appreciate them building things out for Bryce. And that's why I'm at least interested. You've invested so much in him where you have to be able to build it out more than it was last year just to see. And their offensive line play was so bad. And there's a world where the guard play certainly is going to be better than last year. In fact, I think a stat that I haven't double checked, but I would wonder if it could possibly be true. I don't know how many pressures those guys gave up, but Chandler Zavala, a guy who started 4 games for us last year, gave up 40 pressures, right? In 4 games. I wonder if these two dudes last year combined didn't give up 40 pressures, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it certainly could be possible. The one move I was like a huge fan of was the Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, I think they fleeced the
yes.
Steelers.
I think look, Dante Jackson to me is just not a strong cornerback too. There's definitely worse. Like
he'd be fighting to make the roster. I feel like every preseason, like his spot shouldn't be guaranteed, even though he's a name.
Yeah, I mean that's what I thought of him. I thought that he was cut, and then I think they said they were planning on it, and then he got traded, kind of like what happened with Mixon, almost, I believe. But Johnson, look, I know he has the drop issues, and those are valid, but I'll take anybody who can just get themselves open, man. I mean, you got to realize the level the Panthers receivers were at last year, and the direness of this situation. And while I do say, every move has to be good in a vacuum, and this one is, But I do say move has to be a good move in a vacuum. You do have to help Bryce. You cannot just sit here with like no receivers and no offensive line and just run it back. Now the hope would be that you don't, and what it's felt like this offseason, you don't just spend more than you probably should on every single guy. But at least with Johnson, it feels like they gave up basically nothing. I mean, they're paying him his like $15 million. That's perfectly fair to me. They still need to address receiver more. But I just think overall, it's like I don't hate any of the moves that the Panthers have made. But then I look at the guys and I look at the total number of money they've spent, and I can't say that in a vacuum that has all been good deals. So I'm excited. I'm interested if they go get if they go like double receiver in the draft and they're guys I like, I could get pretty interested, pretty invested in this offense. But at the same time, are these great long-term deals? Maybe not. Are we having to say, well, we could cut them after 2 seasons for only so? We are a little bit. And did they post that here's the Panthers offense next year graphic? Everybody for engagement? Yes, they did. Here's the Panthers offense, and it's Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas. Come on, man.
Hey, man. Those guys,
Tommy Tremble, they knew what they were doing with that. None of those places were unaware.
Right.
Whatever, they win.
Matt, I was looking at the top spenders in offensive line talent over the past 4 to 5 years. And on average, the team that is spending the most on offensive line is usually spending around $40 million. The Panthers are set this year to have a cap hit on their offensive line of $76 million. Given the cap has increased a lot, because the Texans are behind them with 68, the Colts are behind them with 68. But $76 million is...
But the cap has increased.
The cap
a lot.
It
has increased a lot, but $76 million is crazy.
They're still number one in percent of cap. I think...
How many guys do they have signed right now for their offensive line?
That's a great question, Matt.
Probably like 16, and it'll go down. And then the cap increase will probably... even that out, I would have to guess.
I'm looking at some of these RAS scores. I know that Canales said that he thought the Panthers were running an incorrect scheme for their skill set, and he was like, we have these heavy-handed, powerful guys. We should be running more gap scheme with down blocks and guys pulling and annihilating linebackers. Damian Lewis, looking at his RAS scores, he's 327 pounds, 6'2". So that is a 1.05 height percentile. So that's red. And then an 8.85 weight. So that is a sturdy ass individual. And then Robert Hunt is kind of a similar proportion. He's, he's 6'5" actually. Well, this was as an offensive tackle coming out of Louisiana. So I guess these numbers are a little different, but still a couple 320 plus pounders. To, I guess, try to down block the shit out of anybody who dares line up against this vaunted, expensive Panthers.
And when things were good under Wilkes, it was a lot of power, it was a lot of gap scheme, and the zone was certainly not as successful. I think the Panthers' offensive line could be pretty good.
Yeah, if they have like an identity that they're committing to, like. Anything would be better, like just any like coherent plan. Like, oh, we want to run gap scheme. Let's go get guys who do that. Like, even if they're not the best gap scheme guys in the world or the best pass protectors or whatever, like at least they have something they can maybe hang their hat on. So I do like that they're building some sort of identity. Like maybe there's like at least one thing they can be above average at, which last year there was nothing. So I do like that about it, but it does feel like we're going to look back at these moves and say like, man, remember when the Panthers got Robert Hunt for only $100 million? Like there's just no way we're saying that. So I don't know. It's whatever. They have an identity. They got another wide receiver on the cheap. I don't know what Pittsburgh was doing, giving Deontay Johnson away, because now their wide receiving core is so terrible. It's so awful. And I know
who's wide receiver 2 there right now?
Calvin Austin.
Oh yeah.
And I know they're Steelers fans. Like, we draft and develop second round and third or day 2 wide receivers like automatically. And it's like, yes, I agree. The Steelers might cook and take. I like Javon Baker. It could be anybody in day 3 or round 3, and have them be good. But the thing is, they needed a third wide receiver when they had Deontay Johnson. So it's like even if they draft a day 2 guy and he hits, their wide receiving core is probably still below average.
Yeah, they not only need that guy to hit, they need him to be like Puka Nacua level good.
Yeah, right. It can't be like a 700-yard 4-touchdown performance decent, and all of a sudden the receiving core is great. Like, it's
right.
I don't know. I think that they've now created a huge need for themselves. Like, their wide receiver room is probably one of the worst of any rooms of any unit anywhere across the league now. And they didn't add anything. They pick swapped day 3 picks, and they added a corner who probably won't start for them. And if he does, he's not going to be a positive starter. So I get that Deontay was frustrating. I get that he was a bit checked out, but I'd rather keep him and deal with all that than let him go and have no discernible answer or nothing to show for it, really, because I don't even think they're saving that much in cap space. So I don't dislike everything. Like, I don't think they really overpaid that much for Queen, although I doubt he's gonna like replicate all of his success outside of when Roquan is removed. But that's kind of baked into the price. It's not like he signed some like market resetting deal or anything. So and signing
Right.
Russ, I think, is, I mean, he's pretty cheap as well. So it's fine outside of that. I know Steelers fans were mad. They were like, "You never say anything. You never say anything good about the Steelers." It's like,
Be better. I don't like.
okay, they traded up for
Yeah,
Broderick Jones instead of taking Christian Gonzalez. Took Kenny Pickett in the first round. Like,
Yeah, they still got Joey Porter though. So
I did. Yeah, true. But they took Najee Harris in the first round. Like, which one of these moves was I supposed to like fall on my knees and like praise? I don't know, but whatever.
yeah. Well, the next team after the Carolina Panthers is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders. They obviously signed Wilkins, which we've talked about a little bit already. But they also signed Minshew for $25 million over 2 years, which is just another
a bad
team
deal.
that is, which he might be their starter at this point. We talk about the number of teams that have made, big signings for backup quarterbacks, and Minshew is no exception there, but Minshew might end up being the starter for them because their quarterback situation is just so bad.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the Raiders offseason. I think it's exciting maybe to get Wilkins. It's almost like the reverse of the Brian Burns thing, really. It's like they're getting the big defensive tackle to go next to their edge rusher, and the Giants have the big defensive tackle, and they went and got the edge rusher.
Yeah.
I think they've not done really all that much else outside of the Minshew stuff, man. It's been pretty quiet for them, and it's a team, we were saying, they're really far away. They have to make good moves in a vacuum and sort of build back up. Wilkins, like, kind of cool, kind of fine. I was surprised he hit free agency. Like, I'm really not mad at it, but does it really change your opinion on the Raiders next year? As good of a player as he is, does it really
Probably
make you think
not,
like,
but
okay,
it's-
well, they're
I think it's a
win.
good
They're
move
in
in a vacuum.
They're
though.
kind of in a Giants situation where it's just like they're screwed, dude. It's like you have to beat Mahomes and Reed, and then there's Harbaugh and Herbert, and then there's, who knows what Sean Payton can build, and then your head coach is Antonio Pierce. I guess they're going to try to win by being like, I don't know, like maybe Tomlin devil magic. Like, is that maybe the mold that Pierce is in, like as a motivator, and maybe he can just will the team to victory in close games, and they're just the more physical,
guess.
scrappy team every time. That's kind of what they were doing. And then I think it's a pretty common strategy. Like, let's make the trenches. Let's start this rebuild with the trenches. And right now they have Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins and Kuntz. So, like, maybe the defense will turn around next year. It would definitely not surprise me if they target a trade up for Jaden Daniels potentially, because he was Pierce's crown jewel as the ASU recruiting director, and now he has the opportunity to potentially move up and draft him. Like, that's on the table. I don't know if that's going to happen at all. But I don't know. I see what they're doing. I don't think it's like an unheard of plan, like build the trenches, and Wilkins was a damn good free agent. So I'm not mad at it at all. I just don't think they are in a situation. They're playing on hard mode. They're just playing impossible, and there's just no move that they could make where I'd be like, they'd have to be geniuses to somehow pull this thing out from the Chiefs and actually contend. So I don't know. It's tough to call them winners, but it's more of they have like the poorest owner and the Chiefs are in their division. It's shit is tough, man. And the Wilkins is a valiant effort, I think, to maybe bother Mahomes and Herbert as much as possible and just create hopefully the best pass rush in the league next year. And maybe they can go ahead and do it if Tyree Wilson takes a step, but I just don't know. I just don't know. I think that if you're a Raiders fan, you just, it might be tough for the next 20 years. It's not going to be easy.
20 years?
Might be tough for the next, 10, let's say.
Bro, 20 years, bro?
I don't think they took an L or anything like that.
Mahomes going to play till he's 50.
Deal. Like he's productive. He's super active. Like he's going to get a bunch of tackles. He can beat offensive linemen. He did have a really bad game in the wild card round against the Chiefs, and Trey Smith put him on his ass a couple times. He's a bit lighter as a defensive tackle. If you give him a big double team, like you can move him pretty big. So maybe Harbaugh and signing Gus Edwards and stuff is looking at that signing and licking his lips a little bit. So it's not any kind of home run move, but again, it's like you're the Raiders. Like it's going to be tough. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd rather them like just try to pure money ball it like they were the A's in the book and just give a trade back and give a bunch of like small contracts to huge positional value positions. I don't know. Maybe that's the move, but
maybe
I can't be too. It's just bleak for the Raiders. So I guess I'm not really mad at them for trying to take a big swing.
Can't say I disagree. This episode of Stay Hot is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions over at Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's new Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our official offer. Go over to manscaped.com and use the code STAYHOT, all caps, all one word, for 20% off plus free shipping, because after I've started using Manscaped, I can say I have finally caught the spring fever. And of course, you hate making a mess. That's why they made this boy waterproof. Shave in the shower, in the bath, or even, if you really want to, in the ocean. So once again, go and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code STAYHOT. Again, that's all caps, all one word, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping for the best below the waist grooming in the world with the code STAYHOT at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants.
Steph Curry makes you believe that you can do anything. I mean, look at me. He has me believing that I can shoot threes when I play pickup basketball. And the Curry 11s are specifically designed with ultimate bounce, grip, and stability to allow everyone to do their thing. New generations of ball players are coming up and showing the basketball world that the old rules do not apply. The future is exciting, fast, positive, and hungry. This NBA season, rock your favorite player and rep his shoes on and off the court. The Curry 11s are perfect for both the committed and casual ballers. The UA Warp Tech makes the shoe feel like it was designed for your feet, locked in no matter what you do on the court. Stop in your tracks with dual density UA Flow cushioning and traction, an emergency brake that you don't even notice. Steph's 11th signature shoe steps into the second decade of his sneaker career, pulling colorway inspiration from the wonders of a positive and modernized future on and off the court. Take these kicks with you when you leave the scrimmage and rep UA wherever you go. Do your thing. Change the game. The Curry 11 Future Curry is available now at currybrand.com.
Are you tired of the stress and uncertainty that often comes with buying tickets for events? Picture this. You're excited about attending your favorite band's concert or catching the big game, but the ticket buying process leaves you feeling frustrated and unsure. Well, you're not alone, but fear not, because there is a solution. Game Time. Game Time is your go-to destination for hassle-free ticket buying. Say goodbye to the days of uncertainty and hello to last-minute deals, all-inclusive prices, and the confidence of knowing exactly what you're getting. Personally, I've had my fair share of ticket buying nightmares, but since discovering Game Time, it's been smooth sailing. With their user-friendly app, I can easily browse upcoming events in my area, from concerts to playoff games and everything in between. What sets Game Time apart? Well, for starters, they're all about giving you peace of mind with your purchase. You can preview the view from your seat before buying, ensuring there are no unpleasant surprises when you arrive. Plus, their all-in prices mean you'll never be hit with hidden fees at checkout. But here's the kicker. Game Time is obsessed with helping you save money. From last-minute deals to exclusive flash sales, they've got you covered. And with their zone deals, you can score big-time savings by letting Game Time pick the seats for you. So why wait? Take the guesswork out of ticket buying and download the Game Time app today. And to sweeten the deal, you can use the code BLAIDENK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, so don't miss out on this exclusive offer. Again, that's BLAIDENK, BLAIDENK, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time now for last-minute tickets, lowest prices, and guaranteed satisfaction. But the next team on our list is Tampa Bay. Most of this money, they spent $141 million this offseason. Most of it, of course, went to Baker Mayfield, 3 years, $100 million. But they didn't bring in anyone externally.
Yeah.
It's just they brought back a lot of guys.
And we've talked about.
I will say this.
Right.
I will say this about them. I'm impressed how long they've been able to keep this Super Bowl core together. Usually, when a team gets to the Super Bowl and is that good, everybody just leaves because they've got their ring and now it's time to chase the payday. Somehow, some way, they've kept the same core outside of Brady together for several years now, and I do kind of think they should. It has to be kind of nice to be able to see all of these guys live out their careers as Buccaneers, but it's also to some extent after they've won the Super Bowl, keeping all these guys isn't going to win you something. So maybe it's fine that they're waiting to reset until next year, the year after, when these guys inevitably retire, Mike Evans or Levante David and whatnot. But to some extent, it's kind of cool that they're able to run a pretty good team back so many years in a row. So that's my only take on the Bucs.
Fair.
The fans can decide if it's good or not.
The fans.
Is it worth it?
Fair. Well, the next team then is Jacksonville, who we've talked about briefly, but they have had probably one of the
offseason, bro.
It's not been anything great. They traded for Mac Jones
1 minute ago. Speaking of this is breaking news.
Okay.
1 minute ago, Calvin Ridley signing a 4-year, $92 million deal with the Tennessee Titans.
Oh,
Really? This opens the door for a potential move that streets of Cincinnati are saying is 100% going to happen. But
T. Higgins is the Jaguar. We can all say it. We can just say it.
We can all say. It's a lock. It's a lock. It's okay.
Tennessee. That's interesting.
Ridley. I think Ridley's a good player. They're like Panthers level. Just desperately need a wide receiver. I guess I'd have to see the guaranteed money on how it's structured on that. 4 years, $92 million, you said?
Yes.
Probably a hair rich. Ridley's also not coming off his best season, though. Mm-hmm. And just having guys even if there's maybe some catch radius stuff or some drop issues or whatever, just having guys who can get separation and run things out right. sometimes you got to pay it and get those dudes. It's kind of how I feel about Deontay Johnson, where it's like, okay, maybe there's some like
They're very similar. They're
smaller problem, but it's they're similar. I'm not saying that Johnson is quite as good as Ridley, but it's sort of like just having the guy where you know he's going to be able to actually like win against NFL level cornerbacks with any type of consistency.
Yeah,
is
it might
needed.
take him a while, but he'll get there eventually. Like he'll eventually put a move on. Judy is also a little bit like that. So is Garrett Wilson, but I think that there are levels to this. And
There's definitely levels to
Stylistically,
from Jerry Judy to Garrett Wilson.
But anyway,
Yeah,
he's
so
not a Jaguar anymore. So
He is
I just
not a
looked that up,
Jaguar,
and
but
that had just dropped, which is
that's
very
crazy that we're
convenient.
talking about them as they no longer have him.
So now their
but-
receiving core is Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk. Oh, and T. Higgins, certainly when
dude,
because Matt's buddy heard something on the streets of Cincinnati.
they should bring back Laquan Treadwell.
How long ago was this that he heard this, by the way?
Eons ago. We've known it for ages.
Oh yeah,
Eons.
this happened before T. Higgins was franchised.
This happened-
So
Yes, it did. It did actually happen before that. Before
Okay.
he requested a trade, for the record.
so
I would just like to say though, Laquan Treadwell tweeted out eye emojis 22 hours ago.
oh my
so-
god,
He's going somewhere.
who's stopping this offense? Treadwell, Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. I mean,
Oh,
the
man.
Jaguars, for being top spenders, they haven't added like good starters. It's pretty crazy.
No, it's pretty mid. Mac Jones,
pretty bleak.
and he's not a starter, but like just trading for him is just weird. Devin Duvernay, Darnell Savage, Ronald Darby, Gabe Davis, and Mitch Morse.
Yeah, and then bringing back Ezra Cleveland. Like Mitch Morse is their best signing by far. And then
Yeah.
everybody else, it's like you're spending all this money on starters who are not super positive. Like all of this money has been spent. And how much better has the team gotten? I think they've had one of the worst free agent classes. And Bulky, it really ended poorly in San Francisco. And then it looked like maybe he was starting to turn it around in Jacksonville. But I just think that guy's a pretty much a bottom tier GM, and it's really coming to the light this offseason. I think it would very, very much surprise me based on the way things have shaken out right now. Like I might be willing to call their season right now. Like I like Trevor.
I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time disagreeing, man. I mean, maybe it's like Higgins and Lawrence just cooks.
If Higgins even happens, like,
well, okay, I'm saying like maybe they
Yeah,
get like
yeah.
one of these big time receivers, and like or maybe it's a rookie who is just immediately like the guy, and all of a sudden that and Kirk and Davis is a pretty solid core with Ingram, and Lawrence takes the leap into MVP and the offensive
and like
line. He
Trayvon
just
Walker
deals
and
with it.
Josh Allen combined for like
Yeah, it's like okay, like it's
5 sacks or something.
it's possible,
Which may have happened.
but
this year.
certainly I don't feel better about them now. I mean, I agree. They've spent so much money bringing back a unit that wasn't good.
Yeah, they missed the playoffs.
And
So
it's
I think they've been
it's
horrible.
hard it's hard to understand exactly where you go from there, I guess.
Yeah, maybe there's something I'm missing, but Bulky doesn't give me faith that like his moves will be galaxy brain and we're just not seeing the vision. So what's the next team?
I mean,
think
I
we can just call it.
could make an argument now. They might be worse now than they were when they started free agency after they spent all this money.
I don't think you're that far off.
I'd take Ridley over Gabe Davis, and your other options are like, does the Darnell Savage and Mitch Morse and Devin Duvernay make up for that?
Yeah, and like they let Jenkins their safety walk, and like is Savage a huge upgrade? Like I really don't know what they're cooking down in Jacksonville. Same old Jaguars is sadly my only
tough.
takeaway.
Free Trevor Lawrence.
It might not be his fault.
So next up on our list is the Houston Texans. Finally, a team that has had a good offseason. But a team I feel like we haven't talked a whole lot about. Daniil Hunter, I feel like is the biggest move for them to replace Grenard, who was, Theo, I know you've talked about how good he was last year. So I think worst case scenario, this is a lateral move. Their defensive line will probably still continue to be a pretty effective force. They'll probably still be a pretty good pass rushing team. And you can probably imply improvement from Will Anderson going into year 2. So I'm pretty excited for their defense next year. With Hunter and they brought in Okuda also, which maybe you don't feel too strongly about, but
yeah, it's been 2 off seasons in a row for them that they've been really, really active. Like last year, they brought in Jimmy Ward and Shaq Mason, and they brought in Robert Woods and Devin Singletary. Just like a lot of little moves, really. And then this year, it's been kind of the same thing with some bigger splashes. Danielle Hunter, he's a lot more productive than Grenard last year. Like he had tons of sacks and more pressures and everything. I like Grenard stylistically a lot because he gets pressure so quickly. And I've talked about why that's important on TikTok a lot. Like when you can threaten guys right at the top of their drop. Hunter is older. He's been through a lot of injuries. He's more of like, he gets pressure and like using his length and just kind of weird pass rushing moves, like stuff that no one else will even try. So it's, I do think that it's, if you're going to let Grenard go and bring in Hunter, I don't know it's tough to say who will have the better season next year for me, but maybe it'll be Hunter just because he's in a better situation and stuff like that. So I'm not really too mad at it. I do like Grenard as a free agent a little bit more just because he's younger, and I think his best football might still be ahead of him, and I'm not totally sure that's true for Daniil, but with what the results were last year, it's tough to say that like it's bad to go from Grenard to Hunter.
They also retained Dalton Schultz, and they brought in Danico Autry, who I know you like, Theo, and Aziz Al-Shair. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yep.
I never know. Okay. So I mean, really, like you said, Theo, another really good offseason for them. Just adding good players. Like I don't know.
I mean, I like their offseason a lot more than like what the Jaguars did. I mean, I think that they brought in winning players, and I think the Jaguars brought in guys who I'm not totally sure are upgrades. I think the Texans, they're farther down the list. They spent less money, but they brought in, to me, more positive impacts than a division rival.
Yes.
So I like what they've done. I think that they're being aggressive and to build around Stroud, and I think it could very well pay off. I don't know if they're the most efficient just because they're spending so much money on an inherently inefficient process, but hey, I think the aggressiveness could pay off. I mean, we saw it work with the Rams not that long ago, aggressively spending resources. So,
yeah, I mean, the time you want to win is now when Stroud is cheap. So, I mean, I don't have any problem with them. They already won a playoff game last year. I don't see any reason why they continue to add high-level players and build around Stroud that they can't be in that conversation, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, they don't have a first-round pick, so you're still feeling like you've taken probably a... Wait, did they do have a first-round pick from Cleveland?
They do have a first-round pick, and I think you...
I make that mistake, I think, every single episode, actually. Whatever.
The Browns don't have a first-round pick.
Yeah, so all these players plus a potential first rounder, like a full draft class and slate of picks, like
I mean, I completely agree. Now is the time to be aggressive. You don't make the playoffs and win a game and then say, "Well, we're so young, we're not." Screw that. I'm excited to see Ryan's build out the defense, man. I mean, I have some pretty solid faith offensively that things are coming together pretty darn well for him. The Mixon trade, I don't know.
They haven't been crazy efficient with their offseason, but at the end of the day, their roster is getting better. So,
yeah, I think I agree. And some of these guys, we'll see what Ryans can do with them. It's like what's Okuda going to look like next year and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But man, I really wish I'm not a fan of their running backs. Singletary was good, not great. He walked, and then Pierce is a free agent now, or is he still on the team? Or
No, he's still on the team. He just kind of fell out of favor. So we'll see what. I mean, maybe.
So
they could
Mixon, I think has played his best ball already, and I would have been more excited to see them go in the draft, or even look at one of these other guys. There's a million in free agency. So I'm not gonna say it's a flawless offseason for him, but I'm seeing a decent number of pieces being added to this team.
I mean, of the teams that we've talked about, they've definitely had the best process so far, I feel like.
Yeah, none of these guys are like too far into the future either, like 3 year, 2 year, 2 year, 3 year, 2 year, 1 year, 1 year. It's not like they're given Kirk is a 4-year
That's
deal,
true.
right?
That's true. It is all very short term.
By the time Stroud's payday is done, like all of these contracts, whether they be good or bad, have probably run its course. So yeah, I think that it's good. They're being very aggressive. They've given
out 4 2-year contracts to Autry, Tommy Townsend.
And Townsend is a good punter.
Ford and Hunter. Yeah, Townsend is a good punter. And I feel like all of those are pretty solid. And then Alshire is the only guy who's gotten 3. And I honestly wondered if that was their best move. So maybe they spent some money, but honestly, they didn't spend that much.
No.
I mean, Hunter,
they're in the top
and
10,
Autry, those are the only dudes who got more than $6 million total. So I think I'm a fan of it. Although I think their process being the best probably has more to do with the fact that they're already good.
Yeah,
the team's direction was already good coming into it. So their process is better than the Panthers. Congrats, bro.
Right. Yeah,
they did better than the Jags, who were in their division.
Yeah, they're going to keep on keeping on, and I think that a lot of these guys are guys who clearly fit what D'Amico Ryans wants to do, right? So, I see the scheme fits. I see the timeline. I think it all kind of matches up. So I do agree that this is probably my favorite free agency that we've talked about so far. But
yeah. So that brings us to number 9 on the list, which is the LA Rams. Spent just a tick over $100 million, $103 million. They signed. It's not even that they signed a lot of players or anyone to any ridiculous money. It's just they brought back Kevin Dotson for 3 years, $48 million. They signed Jonah Jackson for 3 years, $51 million. They signed Colby Parkinson for 3 years, $22.5, and Darius Williams for 3 years, $22.5. So it's just that collection of guys is just a lot on its own. But
yeah, I like what they've done. I think when you look at some of the other guard contracts that have been handed out, their deal for Dotson and Jonah Jackson look like pretty good values, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. So, they got good values on guards in a when guards are flying off the board. So I think that you can't be mad at that at all. So it's not any kind of crazy electric offseason. Oh my God, they signed Christian Wilkins. They gave out all these huge deals to big names. That hasn't been the case. But I think we were talking good moves in a vacuum. Got to make good moves in a vacuum, and you got to hit on your draft picks. And I do think they've been making good moves in a vacuum, and we'll see about the draft. And they hit on their draft picks last year.
Yeah, they hit on their draft picks last year. So I trust that they'll do it again this year. So I like the directions the Rams are heading in.
They got McVay, they got Stafford. I still like them as a Tyron Smith destination team at left tackle. Then I think their line.
I could see it
because they do like to be aggressive, and Stafford's they still have a bit of a window. I think they weren't too far from defeating the Lions last year, and then I think they, when it comes down to these division games like them and the 49ers, anything could happen. They could beat the Packers. So I do think that the Rams, they are a good dark horse pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. So if they made one big swing, then I think they could really cement themselves, and they've been known to do it before. So I am kind of waiting for that big move, but I didn't realize they were already top 10 in spending because they've brought in some of these these under the radar signings. So we'll see if it happens.
Yeah. But the last team on this top 10, and then we'll kind of move on, I think. Chicago, the Bears,
How?
102.
I guess
102 million because they re-signed Jalen Johnson for 76, and then they brought in Gerald Everett for 12 and DeAndre Swift for 24 and Byard for 15.
Fraudulent in my book, but we will talk about it.
fraudulent.
In what?
Oh, 100. Oh, they sneak into the top 10 with 100 million because they spent 80 million bucks re-signing one of their own guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well,
they are worth
it's
talking
just the
about
list.
still.
It's just the list.
It's
just I can't be bad at that.
I didn't make the list.
I'm not saying you
man.
made
I
the
didn't make.
list. I'm just saying. They're
You're
a
right,
fraudulent
you're right,
top
you're
10
right.
free agency spender. Jalen Johnson contract, legitimately fantastic. He was one of the best cornerbacks in all of football last year. He could have gotten market resetting money. It wouldn't have been a shock, but he didn't really even feel like I'm that close to it.
And then he immediately said that he had a sex addiction on his press conference for no reason. Did you see that?
I did not.
No, I did not at all.
Yeah, in his press conference after signing the deal, like his opening remark is that he went to therapy for his sex addiction. So prayers up to him for that.
Prayers up, man.
Fair enough.
Real.
I ain't gonna hate.
Anyway, it's like, why did he say that? I guess like
Real, I guess. I don't know.
maybe that's a fake account, and I'm getting like Wesley Steinberg or something.
Yeah, it's like yeah, man. Well, Theo,
Anyway.
I'll give you the floor. I'll give you the floor for DeAndre Swift, though.
Well, I was a bit relieved as a Packer fan with how inactive the Bears were bringing in free agents. Like they had all this cap space, and I thought maybe they would bring in another defensive lineman to complement Montez Sweat. I thought they might bring in, Kevin Byard's a fine safety, but maybe they would target one of the top guys or, target a wide receiver to complement more. They really didn't do any of that. And they brought in Jonathan Owens, who is one of the worst players on the Packers last year, as cool as Simone Biles is. And Jonathan Owens is cool too, I guess. But, from a player standpoint, not super formidable. And then DeAndre Swift wasn't a good contract. They could have waited and signed Aaron Jones for substantially less money, which is a better move at that position. So they had all this cap space, and I kept hearing, Bears fans say we got the number 1 overall pick and we got all the cap space. And yeah, they re-signed Jalen on a good deal, and that's good, but they didn't do anything with the money that they saved outside of overpay DeAndre Swift. So I didn't think this was a good free agency period for them. And they found out that Justin Fields had no trade value, which I guess doesn't really correlate with signings or anything like that. But these past 3 days, it has to be a little bit disappointing since the Jalen Johnson deal for Bears fans, I'd have to imagine.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing for me with the Bears is this has put to bed the idea that they should roll into next year with Fields as the starter, right? I think it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear to me the fact that Atlanta was willing to give 35, almost 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off of an Achilles injury, $180 million. They would rather do that than ride with Justin Fields. I think that says a lot.
Yeah,
So,
let's see. Do we want the guy that the rest of the league sees as a backup and hasn't produced, or do we want the guy that the rest of the league sees as the number 1 overall pick of the draft? I know what I would hope they would do as a rival.
yeah.
So yeah, it's not Fields. Maybe he's a backup there, but even then, it's the fan base is so rabid towards Fields. Would it even be a good idea to have him and Caleb in a competition? Would that be a
I do feel kind of bad for him.
Into it.
I do feel kind of bad for Fields that he won't get to start anywhere next year, it looks like. But
yeah. I mean,
I do think there is I do think in a better situation, maybe there is a world where if he got a fresh start, things could work out better.
I think he'll get one eventually. I mean, Darnold did. I mean, this is his third chance, really. But I just don't think anybody is willing to go and trade a second round pick to be the team that gives Fields that second chance. I mean,
Right.
I've said a million times, a hit rate on a dude who doesn't work out in his first spot after being a first round pick, it's bad, man. And
Yeah.
paying to be the team that takes that on is just, it's not smart from a contract, standpoint either. So it's a lot wrong with it. It sucks, go Buckeyes, but I get it.
Yeah, I think that the Vikings and the Packers have had markedly better free agent periods than the Bears. So, and I think, I've been having the Ryan Poles discussion on Twitter for a while now. I probably will continue to have it, but I still think, even though the future is looking up, even though I think Caleb is going to be great, even though I think the Bears are going to contend, I look at all the moves that he's made. The 2022 draft, as good as the 2023 one was, like, that was really bad and didn't give Fields a chance to succeed. And I still think that trading and then paying Montez Sweat is going to look like an overpay when the expectations get a little bit higher. And then now this offseason, and I just think these moves, when it's really going to be winning time, there's going to be plenty to look back on and say, okay, this team is good now. It's in a stable place. Like, Caleb is good, or May is good, or whatever they do. Like, probably Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they could be winning more games than they have in a long time. But will they have they set the groundwork for a dynasty, or not even a dynasty, like a team that can win the NFC? I think that they may have made some moves that is going to cap their ceiling on down the road. I think Poles has made some big mistakes, and I think these last couple of days have been certainly not a banner day or banner couple of days for him. So we'll see if I'm right about that. I do want to talk about Green Bay. I don't know if they're next on the list, but I do want to interject.
Yeah, go for it, Theo.
I like what Green Bay has done, shockingly, as I get done talking about why I think the Bears have capped their ceiling. But I think McKinney was one of the best free agent signings, or one of the best players to move. And $17 million is a ton for a safety, and I talked about that. But when I watch the tape from him, he kind of checks all the boxes for a good guy to bring in free agency. Like, the film is good. He's pretty physical, like a good tackler. In coverage, he is clearly technically sound and smart. Like, he reads breakpoints well and can get a good jump on things. Like, he has tons of production on the ball in terms of PBUs and interceptions. And like I said, the run defense is good. And as a last line of defense, he can make those touchdown saving tackles. He's versatile. He lines up everywhere. I saw him run down Tyreek Hill from behind when he was in the open space. Like, he didn't test super well, but he seems to be a better athlete than he tested. And he's only 24 years old. He's younger than Sam Hartman, who is in this draft class. Like, he could be, it's almost like adding an older rookie, like on this type of deal. So it was a overpay, but again, that's kind of the inherent thing with free agency. And it's like, what you're paying for is a team captain, young, productive. Like, I don't know how many other free agents check this many boxes. And then kind of the same thing with Josh Jacobs, where it's like, this guy is productive, still pretty young, like, nothing really wrong with him too much from an injury standpoint. Like, there's no reason why this guy couldn't step in and be all pro behind the Packers offensive line and run scheme. And it sucks they got rid of Aaron Jones. Like, I hate that. But as far as like the two guys that they targeted, there's just not, I think, a lot of risk involved with signing them. And I think paying a couple extra million for that security, where it's like, there's just not that much that could go wrong outside of catastrophic injury, which could always happen. So I think as far as free agency winners go, like, it's losing Aaron Jones and him going to the Vikings definitely takes some marks off the Packers record. But as far as the players they have brought in, I feel pretty good that they're going to be as productive as any free agent signed. And like, the Packers are knocking on the door of really being a contender, considering how deep they went last year and how they took San Francisco to the ropes. I think one of their big mistakes during the Rodgers era was, they never waded into free agency at all, like, ever. Their big signing was like, man, Jimmy. I'm trying to think of who the big signings were in the Ted Thompson era that I would get hyped for. Was Jimmy Graham that era? I think it may have been. But since Gutekunst has taken over, like
remember.
Preston and Zadarius Smith
Yeah.
have been good, and I think these two are going to be good as well. So the more I watch film on these guys, especially McKinney, I was like, damn, this is kind of a rare opportunity in free agency to sign a guy like this. And if the Giants didn't match it simply because he's a safety, like I feel like that's fine. I don't know what better player you're going to spend $19 million on, I guess. Like, I guess that he's a safety and that isn't as cool as an edge rusher, but.
No, but good players are good players. The Packers needed a safety.
Yeah,
so.
True. That's the other thing. It's like for a different team, is a safety a huge need? Maybe not. Like if for the Giants, is a safety going to move the needle? But for the Packers, there's no position that they could sign that would move the needle like a safety. So for that specific team, don't really know if that positional value things exist. Because if you just don't sign any safeties because the average for the league says don't sign them, then your safeties suck and you're giving up 50-yard plays every time, right? So for the Packers, like that positional value of safety doesn't really exist because what other position is more valuable for that team? Probably now a guard.
Yeah, something on the O-line, but
then you could draft. They'll probably just draft Graham Barton and call it good. That'd probably be my prediction. So
yeah, I like them bringing in McKinney. I know you're mourning the loss of Aaron Jones, but you got Josh Jacobs. I thought they did a pretty good job. I don't think you can be too mad at it.
Yeah, they had two. They found their targets and they went after them.
Yeah,
and they got it done and they are out now. So I thought it was pretty efficient, even though the signings were above maybe.
Yeah, again, it's the cost of acting in free agency. You overpay a little bit sometimes. But before we get out, one more thing we have to, of course, do is our Under Armour NBA Game Changer of the Week. Matt, let us know, who is it this week?
It's Josh Hart from the game that I watched last night. Knicks finally got Anunoby back, and they looked like their old selves, which was good because the Knicks are one of my favorite storylines this season. They've been so scrappy. I don't even want to say scrappy, like they're just a good team, but they play such a strong brand of basketball, and the Knicks being good is just interesting. And
19 rebounds for Josh Hart. That's pretty scrappy.
That's scrappy. That's scrappy. That's crafty. That's I don't know. There's another word
dogging him.
I'm looking for. He's dogging him. He's a very interesting role player, and his rebounding numbers are funny. People have been talking about that. But he really embodies that whole team, with the 40 minutes every night. Another good Josh Hart stat that somebody posted. He's like the first player to go 8 straight games playing 40 plus minutes in the regular season in like 8 years. Like nobody does that anymore. It's been completely phased out of the game. And Tom Thibodeau he's bringing it back with Josh Hart.
I know they asked Hart about that. They're like, why didn't Tibbs pull the starters when the game was out of reach? And Hart said something he has issues that he needs to work out. Like he needs to go to therapy.
And they're a very fun team. Like it's a very funny response. There's so few locker rooms in the NBA that I feel like are that healthy. I want to say, I don't know what other word to use for it. It's just like, they could just joke about that. And Hart is, a really strong defender. The rebounding maybe seems like it doesn't matter, but man, it does. Or maybe rebound, not that it doesn't matter, but maybe sometimes we push it to the side a little bit, and he can go and get a shot when you need it, which I think is something that can separate a lot of 3-and-D players. There's a difference between a dude who's like PJ Tucker, maybe a little bit more back in his prep, but like PJ Tucker level of 3-and-D, where it's like, okay, offensively, this guy can sit in the corner and they can sit in the corner, versus a guy who's like, a lot more versatile in that sense. When it comes down to like what they can bring, sort of, or like PJ Washington's another guy I always think of, where he's more of like just sort of a spot up, can move around, can cut type dude, but he can handle the ball a little bit more as well.
He was on the Timberwolves, the Trailblazers. Maybe
you need the Nerd Sesh guys here.
They do know all of their. They do know all of their like, NFL trivia and NBA.
I honestly
trivia.
have no idea. I don't have the slightest clue at all. I'm terrible at this type of trivia.
It's okay. So the comments will know.
The comments will know. They'll Google it for us.
I'm thinking of Robert Covington.
Robert Covington. Yeah. He's a good one. So, yeah.
Josh Hart.
Well, I wanted to do, it has to be NBA, but I wanted to do Simas Lukosius, who put up 32 yesterday for the good old Cincinnati Bearcats to defeat West Virginia in the first round of the Big 12 championship game.
Hey.
But Josh Hart deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do for the Knicks, just as sort of a unique role player, which I feel like we're maybe starting to lose a little bit with players needing to be able to do so much now. It feels like those guys don't stick around all the time. Hart has. So, and he's been super, super impactful. Anunoby also was super impactful. I still think the expectation for that team is making the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, that might be all, folks. I fear. Just in case TikTok gets banned, do you guys have any last words?
Well, isn't it like started like a very long process if the CEO doesn't sell it in the next like 6 months or something?
It's not even signed into law yet.
Yeah, and it's like not signed into law. It's not over.
Voted for in the Senate. It's not over.
I'm not giving up for us.
Although my congressman voted yes.
To keep it or get rid of it?
He voted for the bill. He voted for the I lose my job bill. I'm not a fan of that very much at all, dude.
No.
Greg Landsman.
So what I'm hearing is the United States Congress, the House of Representatives, they don't like hardworking Americans.
They don't like a hardworking American like me. In fact, they're doing things to destroy a hardworking American like me. That sucks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty confident it's not going to get banned. I'm not even confident that it's going to pass in the Senate. And then the courts will have something to say, and then it's 6 months, and then TikTok would have to not sell it. So we're still a pretty long ways off
by that time.
It's fine. I was planning on falling off anyway.
My fall off will happen between then and now, so I'm not worried.
I saw a post the other day that was just like, I think I'm ready to fall off. And I get that, man. I understand.
I think I'm ready to fall off.
Take me now.
I've peaked.
As long as DeAndre Swift keeps getting big contracts, I will not be falling off, I guess.
You'll always have a little money maker for you. Yeah. Worst case scenario, though, Instagram Reels.
As long as Herbert keeps losing games, I will not be falling off.
Yeah, the day that Justin Herbert,
you're good for a while, everybody. I wouldn't get too worried.
I pick my spots well. What can I say?
Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and DeAndre Swift are keeping Theo in a job right now.
Yep.
But yeah, TikTok hopefully doesn't get banned, but if it does, oh well. We have time.
We'll figure something out, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Stay Hot. We'll be back probably with another prospect rankings episode at the end of this weekend for our Monday morning episode as we normally have been. But until then, once again, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the flippity flop.